Hey everyone, thanks for clicking on this video. Real quick before we start, if this story sends chills down your spine, smash that like button and subscribe. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I always wonder who's brave enough to watch these stories at 3 a.m. All right, let's get into it. My name is James Morrison, Petty Officer First Class, United States Navy. Submarine service I served for 12 years on some of the most advanced vessels humanity has ever built. I've been deeper underwater than most people can imagine. I've seen things in the ocean that aren't in any textbook or documentary. And 3 years ago, I retired with full benefits, a chest full of medals I can't talk about, and nightmares that won't stop. This is the first time I'm telling this story publicly. My therapist thinks it will help. My former commanding officer probably thinks I've lost my mind. But I need to get this out. I need someone else to know what's down there, what we found, what we woke up, and why I can't look at the ocean anymore without feeling watched. It started in June 2016. I was stationed on the USS Jimmy Carter, a Seawolf-class submarine that officially doesn't exist in most Navy records. If you look it up, you'll find basic information: length, displacement, crew complement. What you won't find is what we really did, the missions that never appeared in any log, the places we went that aren't on any map. The Jimmy Carter is special. It has a section called the multi-mission platform, an extra 100 feet of hull that houses equipment for covert operations sealed delivery systems, deep sea research gear, sensors that can detect a whisper at 1,000 yards, and other things I signed papers promising I'd never discuss, but some promises need to be broken. We departed from Naval Base Kitsap in Washington State on June 3, 2016. The crew was told we were conducting routine Arctic patrol operations mapping the seafloor, monitoring Russian submarine activity. Standard stuff. Nobody questioned it. You learn quickly in the submarine service that questions are discouraged. The Arctic Ocean in summer is beautiful from above. Endless ice fields breaking apart in the midnight sun. Polar bears hunting seals. Pristine wilderness. But underneath, it's a different world. Dark. Cold. Pressurized hell, where the weight of the water above you could crush a car like a tin can. We love it down there. Don't ask me why. Maybe it's the isolation. Maybe it's knowing we're in a place humans weren't designed to survive. Maybe it's the simple fact that nobody can bother you when you're 1,000 feet underwater with several feet of steel between you and everyone else. The first week was routine. We ran north through the Bering Strait, dove deep, and began our survey pattern. The sonar operators mapped the bottom. The navigation team plotted courses. The engineers kept our reactor humming. I worked in the torpedo room, maintaining weapons systems we all hoped we'd never use. At night, during off hours, I'd sometimes stand in the sonar room and listen. Most people don't know submarines can hear almost everything in the ocean. Whale songs from hundreds of miles away, ships passing overhead, the grinding of icebergs, the earth itself shifting and settling. It's like listening to another planet. Tommy Reeves was our senior sonar operator. Best ears in the fleet. He could identify a Russian submarine by the sound of its propeller from 20 miles out, could tell you what kind of whale was singing, and probably its approximate age. He'd been doing this for 16 years, and claimed he'd heard everything the ocean could throw at him. On June 11th, at 0330 hours, Tommy heard something new. I was in my bunk when the alarm sounded. General quarters. Everyone to battle stations. I pulled on my coveralls and ran to my station, muscle memory taking over. In a submarine, you practice these drills until you can do them in your sleep. Because when things go wrong underwater, you don't have time to think. The captain's voice came over the 1MC. All hands. This is the captain. We have an unidentified sonar contact. Large, deep, moving. Man your stations and maintain silence. That last part was important. Submarines stay quiet. It's how we hunt, how we hide, how we survive. But the urgency in the captain's voice suggested this wasn't a drill. I made it to the torpedo room and checked in with Lieutenant Vasquez, my division officer. He looked tense. "What have we got, sir?" I asked quietly. "Don't know yet. Something big on passive sonar, bearing 045, range unknown. It's deep, really deep." "Russian?" "Negative biologics." I felt a chill. Biologics meant whales, usually. But the way he said it suggested this wasn't a whale encounter. I made my way to the control room, where I could hear Tommy at the sonar station. The captain stood behind him, the XO at his side. The atmosphere was electric, with tension. "Talk to me, Reeves," the captain said. Tommy's hands moved over his controls, adjusting filters, isolating frequencies. "Contact? Bearing 045, sir. Range approximately 15 nautical miles. Depth? Jesus. Depth is reading 12,000 feet. The XO leaned forward. That's below crush depth for any submarine. Has to be biological. That's what I thought, sir. But the size, the computer's estimating 200 feet in length. And it's moving. Not drifting. Moving with purpose. Speed approximately 8 knots. The captain and XO exchanged glances. No whale on Earth was 200 feet long. Blue whales, the largest animals ever to exist, topped out around 100 feet. And they didn't dive to 12,000 feet. "Could the computer be wrong?" the captain asked. "I've run it 3 times, sir. Same result. And there's something else." Tommy adjusted his headphones. "It's making noise. Want to hear it?" The captain nodded. Tommy flipped a switch and the control room filled with sound. It was low. So low you felt it more than heard it. A resonance that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It made the deck plates vibrate, made the hair on my arms stand up. It didn't sound like any whale song I had ever heard. It was more deliberate, like notes, in a sequence, like language, like singing. "That's not any marine mammal, I know," the XO said quietly. The captain stared at the sonar display. "How long has it been making that sound?" "Since we first detected it, sir. Continuous." "And, Tommy hesitated. "Sir, I'm now detecting multiple contacts, same bearing, same depth, all making the same sound." "How many?" Tommy worked his controls. His face went pale. Dozens, sir. Maybe one more. They're all around us. The control room fell silent, except for that sound, that deep, resonant singing that seemed to bypass your ears and go straight into your bones. I felt dizzy, nauseous, and I wasn't the only one. I saw other crew members steadying themselves against consoles. Captain, recommend we change course, the XO said. Get some distance from whatever that is. But Captain Richardson was a different breed. 30 years in the Navy, 3 combat deployments. A man who believed in answers, not retreat. Negative. We're going to investigate. Nav, plot an intercept course. Diving officer, make your depth 2,000 feet. Let's get a closer look at whatever this is. The XO started to protest. Sir, we don't know what we're dealing with. Could be a natural phenomenon. Could be some kind of mass beaching event. Could be the discovery of the century. The captain interrupted. We have the most advanced submarine on the planet, and sensors that can see things nobody else can see. We'd be derelict in our duty not to investigate. Besides, they're 12,000 feet down. We'll observe from 2,000, plenty of separation. I watched the depth gauge as we descended 500 feet. 1,000 feet. 1,500 feet. The hull creaked and groaned as the pressure increased. The temperature dropped. We were entering the deep ocean, where sunlight never reaches, and the pressure would kill an unprotected human in seconds. At 2,000 feet, we leveled out and crept forward. The singing grew louder, more complex. I realized it wasn't just one tone, but multiple tones layered together. Harmonics, like a choir. Range to contacts, 1,500 yards, Tommy reported. They're rising, sir, coming up from the deep. Depth now 10,000 feet. Speed increasing to 12 knots. They're coming toward us? The XO asked. Negative, sir. They're rising on a parallel course. Like they know we're here, but they're not interested in us. Can we get visual? The captain asked. Deploying mast camera, someone replied. On the monitors, we could see the dark water illuminated by our external lights. At this depth, it was like flying through space. Nothing but blackness in every direction. But then, at the edge of our lights, I saw movement. Something pale. Something big. Camera 2, zoom in, the captain ordered. The image on the monitor shifted, zoomed, focused. And there it was. I've spent years trying to describe what I saw. Words don't really capture it, but I'll try. It was humanoid, roughly human-shaped. 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso ahead. But it was massive. 40, maybe 50 feet tall if it were standing. Its skin was pale, translucent, like deep-sea fish. And through that skin, I could see its insides. A heart beating slowly. Lungs expanding and contracting. Blood vessels pulsing. Organs I couldn't identify. But it wasn't breathing water. It was breathing something else. Something that glowed faintly blue-green. Bioluminescence. The glow moved through its body, with each breath, circulating through vessels, illuminating it from within. Its face was almost human, eyes, nose, mouth. But the proportions were wrong. The eyes were too large, adapted for total darkness. the mouth too wide. And when it turned its head, when those eyes swept across our position, I felt something I'd never felt before underwater. I felt seen. "Dear God," someone whispered. "Camera 3, the captain said, his voice tight. "Get me more angles." The other cameras activated, and that's when we saw them all. Dozens of these beings, rising from the abyss in a loose formation, all singing, all glowing with that eerie bioluminescence, all moving with purpose and intelligence. "They're not fish," I heard myself say. "They're people. They're goddamn people." The XO shot me a look, but didn't argue because he could see it too. We all could. These weren't animals, they had expressions. Awareness. They communicated with each other through gestures and that singing. They moved in coordinated patterns. They were a civilization, a society, and we had just stumbled into their territory. One of them broke formation and approached our submarine, slowly, carefully, like someone approaching a wild animal. It came within 50 feet of our hull and stopped, hanging in the water, studying us. I could see its face clearly now on the monitor. Ancient, ageless, alien and familiar at the same time. Its eyes met the camera lens, fit my eyes through the screen. And I knew with absolute certainty that it was thinking, analyzing, trying to understand what we were, just as we were trying to understand what it was. "Sir, it's getting too close," the X said. "If it touches the hull, I see it, exohelm. Back us off." Slowly, 5-degree down angle. We began to descend and retreat. The being watched us go. It didn't follow, just watched with those enormous eyes. Then it did something that made my blood freeze. It raised one hand, not threatening, not aggressive, just raised its hand. Like a greeting, like goodbye, like it was acknowledging us as intelligent beings who had crossed into their world and were now leaving. The captain saw it too. Did that thing just wave at us? Nobody answered because nobody knew what to say. We continued our retreat, descending to 3,000 feet, then 4,000. The beings continued their ascent in the opposite direction. Within 20 minutes, they were beyond our sensor range, gone back into the depths from which they came. The control room was silent, except for the normal sounds of the boat, the ventilation, the sonar pings, the reactor's steady hum. But everything felt different now. Wrong. Like we'd crossed a threshold we couldn't uncross. Captain Richardson turned to face the crew. His face was composed, but I could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. "Everything you just saw is classified top secret special access program. You will not discuss it with anyone outside this control room without my explicit permission. You will not log it in any personal records. You will not photograph or video any of the data. Is that understood?" "Aye, Captain," we all said. "Good. Now let's figure out what the hell we just found." Over the next 6 hours, we analyzed everything. The sonar recordings, the video footage, the water samples our systems had automatically collected. And the more we learned, the stranger it got. The beings were definitely biological carbon-based life forms like us. But their biochemistry was alien. They didn't use oxygen like we do. They processed something else. Something our instruments couldn't quite identify, some kind of chemical compound that existed at extreme depths and pressures. Their bodies were adapted for crushing pressure. Bones like flexible cartilage, organs designed to function under force that would pulverize a human. And that bioluminescence wasn't for hunting or mating displays. It was their blood. Their circulatory system carried compounds that glowed, that lit them from within. Tercera Chen, our onboard scientist, stared at the data with disbelief. This is impossible. Evolution doesn't work this way. You can't have something this complex, this sophisticated, without millions of years of fossil record, without us knowing about it. Unless they've been down there the whole time, Tommy said quietly. In places we've never looked, depths we've never reached. The Mariana Trench goes down under 36,000 feet, Dr. Chen said. We've barely scratched the surface of deep ocean exploration. There could be entire ecosystems down there we know nothing about. But these aren't fish or squid, the XO continued. They're humanoid. Bilateral symmetry, recognizable organs, similar body plan to us. That's not convergent evolution. He trailed off, because the implication was too big to voice. Captain Richardson said it for him. That's evidence of common ancestry. These things are related to us somehow. The room went quiet again. Because if he was right, if these beings shared our evolutionary history, that meant something incredible and terrifying. It meant at some point, millions of years ago, some branch of the human family tree didn't stay on land. They went back to the ocean. They adapted. They evolved. They became something else. And they'd been down there ever since, living in the dark, while we built cities and civilizations and thought we ruled the planet. We need to report this, the XO said. This is bigger than our mission, bigger than the Navy. This is classified, the captain interrupted. And it stays that way until we have orders from ComSubPac. Nobody transmits anything. Nobody calls home. We maintain radio silence until I say otherwise. Over the next 3 days, we continued our patrol, but everything had changed. The crew was jumpy, on edge. During off hours, people gathered in small groups and whispered about what we'd seen. Theories flew. Ancient civilizations, Atlantis, alien colonies. Everyone had an explanation, and none of them felt adequate. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that being's face, those eyes, that hand raised in greeting or warning, or whatever it had meant. I kept thinking about how it had looked at me, not through the camera, at me, like it knew I was there, a real person, not just part of the machine. On June 14th, 3 days after the encounter, Tommy picked up the sound. Again, I was in the mess hall eating lunch, when the 1MC crackled to life. Sonar contact. General quarters. All hands to battle stations. We scrambled. Back to our stations. Back to the routine that kept us But this time was different. This time, There weren't dozens of contacts. There were hundreds, all around us, all singing. And they weren't rising from the deep. They were surfacing. The sonar display looked like a snowstorm. Hundreds of contacts, all converging on the surface. The singing had changed too. It was louder now, more urgent. The harmonics created interference patterns that made our sensors glitch and reset. Depth of contacts? Captain Richardson demanded. Multiple depths, sir. Some at 8,000 feet. Some at 4,000. Some at... Tommy paused, adjusted his equipment. Sir, I have contacts at 500 feet. They're all around us. We're surrounded. The captain's jaw tightened. Helm, all stop. Hold position. Let's not spook them. If they can be spooked, the XO muttered. We hung there, in the water column, 3,500 feet down, while hundreds of those beings rose past us toward the surface. The external cameras captured glimpses as they passed that pale, translucent skin. Those glowing internal organs, bodies moving through the water with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. And they ignored us completely. We were like a parked car on the side of a highway. They flowed around us without acknowledgement, focused on whatever destination called them upward. Where are they going? I asked. Nobody in particular. Dr. Chen was watching the monitors with wide eyes. Maybe they surface regularly. To breathe. To feed. We don't know their life cycle. They've been underwater for at least 3 days since we first saw them, Tommy said. Why surface now? Nobody had an answer. It took 40 minutes for them all to pass. The last few stragglers rose above our position and disappeared into the darkness overhead. The singing faded. The water around us returned to its normal, empty state. Surface traffic? The captain asked. The watch officer checked the navigation radar. Negative surface contacts within 50 nautical miles, sir. We're clear. Take us up. Periscope depth. Slowly, we began our ascent. 3,000 feet. 2,000 feet. 1,000 feet. As we rose, I felt my chest tighten. Something about this felt wrong. Predatory, even. Like we were following prey into a trap. At 200 feet, the captain ordered periscope depth and raised the search scope. Through the boat's internal cameras, I could see him scanning the surface, searching for any sign of those beings. I've got... Jesus. XO. Take a look at this. The XO pressed his face to the scope. He went pale. Captain, recommend we dive immediately. What is it? You need to see it yourself, sir. Captain Richardson looked through the scope for a long moment. Then he stepped back and pressed the button to extend the photonics, masked so the rest of us could see the digital feed on the monitors. The Arctic Ocean surface was chaos. The ice pack had broken apart in a perfect circle about a mile across. And in that circle, in the open water, they were there. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Floating at the surface, their bodies half submerged, their faces turned toward the sky. They weren't moving. Weren't swimming. Just floating in formation. Like some massive gathering or ceremony. And that singing, that impossible, harmonized sound, was coming from all of them at once. It vibrated through the water, through our hull, through our bones. What are they doing? Someone whispered. Dr. Chen was recording everything on her tablet, her hands shaking. It looks like they're sunbathing. Thermal regulation, maybe? But we detected bioluminescence. They generate their own heat. They shouldn't need surface warmth. Maybe it's not about warmth, Tommy said quietly. He'd taken off his headphones, but I could tell he was still listening. Maybe it's about something else. Communication, maybe. The sound's different up there. Less interference from water pressure and depth. Maybe they need to surface to really talk to each other. It made a terrible kind of sense. We'd only heard individual beings singing before. But this was the whole choir. This was their language, at full volume, and the complexity of it was stunning. Layers upon layers of sound, each one distinct, but part of a greater whole. How long do they usually stay at the surface? The captain asked. Sir, we have no baseline, the XO replied. We don't know if they've ever done this before. Then we wait and observe. Maintain periscope depth. All sensors active, document everything. So, we watched. For 3 hours, we hung at periscope depth and watched thousands of those beings float motionless on the surface. The singing never stopped, never wavered. It was hypnotic, beautiful, in a way that made you uncomfortable, like hearing something you weren't supposed to hear. I rotated through my watch station, checking torpedo tubes I knew we'd never fire, maintaining weapons we'd never use against creatures like these. What would be the point? You can't fight the ocean. You can't fight something that lives where we can't survive. At hour 4, something changed. The singing shifted. The tone went from harmonic to discordant, from peaceful to alarmed. Captain, the pattern's changing, Tommy reported. They're agitated about something. Can you identify what? Negative, sir. But whatever it is, they're responding to it as a group. On the monitors, I could see the beings moving now. Not randomly, but with purpose. They were diving. Hundreds of them. Slipping beneath the surface simultaneously. Like a flock of birds, responding to a predator. Within minutes, the surface was empty again. The ice began to close back over the open water. It was as if they'd never been there. Where'd they go? The captain demanded. Tommy worked his controls frantically. I'm tracking them, sir. They're diving. Fast. Depth now 2,000 feet and descending. They're going back down. What spooked them? I don't know, sir. But wait. I'm picking up something else. New contact. Bearing 270. Range 20 miles. Moving fast. Very fast. Identification? Working on it, sir. It's big. Bigger than anything I have ever tracked. Computers having trouble getting a solid reading because it's not following normal movement patterns. It's too erratic. The lights flickered. Every screen in the control room went dark for half a second, then came back. On alarms began screaming. Engineering report, the captain barked. Sir, we just experienced a massive electromagnetic pulse. Source unknown. Reactors still good, but we've got multiple system failures. Backup power engaged. How is that possible? We're underwater. EMPs don't propagate through... Sir, Tommy interrupted. New contact is closing. Range now. 10 miles speed... Jesus, speed is over 60 knots. That was impossible. No submarine could move at 60 knots. No whale could swim that fast. Nothing that big could move through water at that speed without tearing itself apart. "Captain, recommend emergency dive," the XO said urgently. "Get us out of here now." For once, the Kane didn't argue. "Diving officer, make your depth 1,000 feet. Emergency speed helm, left full rudder. Get us away from that contact." The Jimmy Carter tilted sharply. As we dove, I grabbed a railing to steady myself. Around me, crew members secured loose equipment and braced against consoles. We were running. The most advanced submarine in the world was running from something. "Contact range 5 miles, Tommy reported. "Still closing, still accelerating." "How fast now?" 70 knots, sir, and it's changing depth. Following us down." "Weapons," the captain said quietly. "Spin up torpedo tubes 1 and 2. Defensive posture only. Do not fire unless I give explicit orders." I felt my stomach drop. We were going to war. Ready stance against something we didn't understand. Something that might not even be hostile. "Tubes 1 and 2 ready, sir," I reported, my voice steadier than I felt. "Range 3 miles, Tommy said. Wait. It's slowing. Depth now 2,000 feet. Speed decreasing to 30 knots. 20 knots? 10 knots. Is it stopping?" "Negative, sir. It's matching our course and speed. It's pacing us." The control room fell silent, except for the sounds of the boat. We were being followed. Something massive was following us through the deep ocean, matching our every move. "Go active sonar," the captain ordered. I wanted to know what this thing is. Active sonar was a risk. It was like turning on a flashlight in the dark. It announced your presence to everything in the ocean. But it also gave you a clear picture of what was around you. Tommy activated the system. The ping echoed through the water, bouncing off the seafloor, off distant ice, off... "Oh my God," Tommy whispered. "Report, petty officer." "Sir, the contact is... It's not one thing, it's dozens, maybe hundreds, all clustered together, moving as one, like a school of fish, but these aren't fish. They're them, those beings. They're following us." Captain Richardson processed this. "They're escorting us. Why?" "Maybe we're in their territory," Dr. Chen suggested. "Maybe they're making sure we leave. Or maybe they're hurting us," the XO said grimly, "pushing us towards something." As if in response, the singing started again. But different this time. Not harmonious. Aggressive. The sound made my teeth hurt, made my vision blur. It was so loud I could feel it in my chest, feel my heart rhythm starting to sync with the pulses. "They're using sound as a weapon," Dr. Chen said, holding her head. "Acoustic warfare. They're trying to disorient us." "Helm, increase speed," the captain ordered. "Let's see if we can outrun them." We accelerated to 25 knots, the widest we could safely go at depth. But the beings matched us easily, stayed right on our tail. And that sound, that weaponized singing, grew louder. Crew members were dropping to their knees. Blood trickled from noses and ears. The sonar displays were going haywire from the interference. Our navigation systems were glitching. Even the reactor was showing fluctuations. "Captain, we can't take much more of this," the engineer reported over the intercom. "The resonance is affecting our systems. If they keep this up, we could lose power." Deploy countermeasures, the captain ordered. Noisemakers, decoys, anything to break their lock on us. We fired devices designed to confuse enemy submarines. They worked by creating false acoustic signatures, making it seem like we were in multiple places at once. The beings responded immediately. The singing stopped. For 10 seconds, blessed silence. Then something hit us. Not physically, but the pressure wave was so powerful, it rocked the entire boat. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered. I was thrown against the bulkhead, felt my shoulder wrench. "Damage report," the wingman shouted. "Hull integrity good. No flooding. But we just registered an impact equivalent to a depth charge explosion. No actual explosion, sir. Just pressure, like they slapped us." "They're angry," Tommy said. He was bleeding from his nose, but still at his station. "We deployed countermeasures. They took it as an attack. They hit back." "Sir, respectfully, we need to stop running," Dr. Chen said. "We're making this worse. They're herding behavior, like dolphins with sharks. If we keep running, keep deploying weapons, they'll see us as a threat." "What do you suggest, Doctor?" "We stop. We go quiet. We show them we're not a threat." The XO looked at her like she was insane. "You want us to surrender to fish?" "They're not fish," I said quietly. "You've seen them. They're intelligent. They communicate. They coordinate. They're people. Different people, but people. And Dr. Chen's right. If we keep fighting, we lose." Captain Richardson made a decision. I'll never forget. The decision that probably saved all our lives. "All stop. Shut down all active systems. Silent running protocols. No sonar. No movement. We become a hole in the water." The boat went quiet. Reactor to minimal power. Propeller stopped. We drifted with the current, going wherever the ocean wanted to take us. Held our breath and waited. The beings circled us. I could hear them on passive sonar, dozens of them swimming around our hull. That singing had returned, but quieter now. Curious rather than aggressive. They were investigating us. One of them bumped the hull, gently, like someone knocking on a door. The sound echoed through the submarine. "They're touching us," someone whispered. We felt it again. Another bump, then another from a different direction. They were all around us, pressing against the steel, trying to understand what we were. I imagined them out there in the dark, those huge, pale bodies, those glowing organs, those intelligent eyes studying this strange metal fish that had entered their world. Then I heard something that made my blood freeze. A new sound, not from them, from us, from inside the submarine, scratching, coming from the other side of the hull, like fingernails on metal. Except the hull was 6 inches of hardened steel. Nothing should be able to scratch it, especially not fingernails. But the sound continued, methodical, purposeful, and it was moving, traveling along the hull from bow to stern, like something walking along the outside of our boat. I looked at the depth gauge. We were at 1,200 feet. The pressure at that depth was over 500 pounds per square inch. No human could survive outside the hull. But these beings weren't human. The scratching stopped. right outside the torpedo room, where I stood. I pressed my hand against the cold steel, felt the vibration. Something was on the other side. Something was right there. And then I heard it. A voice, muffled by the hull, but clear enough to understand, speaking English. You should not be here. Every person in the torpedo room froze. We looked at each other, confirming we'd all heard the same thing. It wasn't possible. These beings lived at the bottom of the ocean. They didn't speak English. They didn't speak any human language. The voice came again, clearer this time. Female, young-sounding. This is our home. You are not welcome. Leave, and do not return. I found my voice. Can you understand me? Silence, then. Yes, we learned your language from the ones who came before, the ones who never left. My mind raced. The ones who came before? What did that mean? We don't mean any harm, I said. We're explorers, scientists. We just want to understand. You cannot understand. Your minds are too small. Your lives too short. We have been here since before your kind walked on land. We will be here after you are gone. This is our world. You are the visitors. The scratching started again, moving away from my position, toward the stern. Then it stopped completely. The beings began to move away from our hull. Within minutes, passive sonar showed them descending, returning to the deep. We were again as Captain Richardson came on the 1MC. All hands maintain silent running for another 30 minutes. Then we're getting the hell out of here and never coming back. That was 3 years ago. We made it back to port. We filed our reports. We were debriefed by people whose names we never learned and whose faces we were told to forget. Every piece of data was confiscated, every recording erased. Every crew member was threatened with a prosecution under the Espionage Act if we ever spoke about what we'd seen. Most of us kept quiet. What choice did we have? Who would believe us anyway? But I can't forget. And lately, I've been seeing things. News reports about missing fishing vessels in the Arctic. Scientific expeditions that departed and never returned. Underwater microphones detecting sounds that shouldn't exist. They're still down there, still watching. And maybe, just maybe, they're coming up more often. Because the ocean is changing. It's warming. It's getting louder, with ship traffic and sonar and human noise. We're making their home unlivable. And when you make someone's home unlivable, they have two choices: adapt or relocate. I think they're choosing to relocate, to shallower waters, to places closer to us. That voice said they learned English from the ones who came before. I think about that a lot. About submarines that disappeared over the decades. About sailors lost at sea. About people who went into the ocean and never came back. Where are they now? What did they learn down there in the dark? I'm telling you this because you need to know. If you live near the ocean, pay attention. If you hear singing at night, strange harmonics that don't sound like whales, don't investigate. If you see lights under the water that move with intelligence and purpose, don't go closer. They're coming up. And I don't think they're asking permission anymore. We maintained silent running for 2 hours. Not 30 minutes like the captain said. 2 full hours of drifting in the dark, listening to the passive sonar, waiting for any sign that those beings were coming back. They didn't. The ocean around us returned to its normal state. Whale songs in the distance, the grinding of ice above, the subtle creaks and groans of the deep. But no more singing, no more of those voices. They had delivered their message and withdrawn. Finally, Captain Richardson gave the order. All ahead, 1/3, bring us to periscope depth. Let's get a GPS fix and plot a course home. The ascent felt different this time. Every crew member was on edge, waiting for something to grab us, to stop us, to pull us back down. But nothing happened. We rose through the water column without incident and broke surface in the middle of an empty Arctic Ocean. The captain transmitted a short encrypted burst to comm sub-pack mission complete. Returning to base. Request immediate debrief upon arrival. Then we dove again and ran south as fast as our reactor could push us. Nobody slept well during the transit back to Washington State. The boat was too quiet. People spoke in whispers. During off hours, crew members gathered in small groups and talked about what we'd experienced, trying to make sense of it, trying to convince ourselves it had actually happened. Tommy Reeves wouldn't take off his headphones. He sat at the sonar station during his off hours, listening to recordings he'd secretly made before the data confiscation order. He played them at low volume, studying the patterns, trying to decode the language. "It's not random," he told me one night in the mess hall. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. "The singing. It's structured, it has grammar, syntax. It's an actual language, James. And we heard it. We know it exists." "Does it matter?" I asked. "They took all our recordings. They'll bury this so deep, nobody will ever know." "I know," Tommy said quietly. "I'll always know, and that has to mean something." Dr. Sarah Chen was equally affected. She spent the transit writing in notebooks, filling page after page with observations and theories. When I asked what she was doing, she said, "If they erase the digital records, at least I'll have this somewhere, somehow. The truth needs to exist." The XO walked past and heard her. "Doctor, you signed a non-disclosure agreement. Those notebooks will be confiscated too." "Then I'll memorize it," she replied. "They can take my notes, but they can't take my memory." The XO didn't respond. What could he say? She was right. We arrived at Naval Base Kitsap on June 23, 2016, 10 days after our encounter. Black SUVs were waiting at the dock before we'd even finished tying up. Men in suits with federal badges, not Navy, not even Department of Defense. These were intelligence community, the kind of people who make things disappear. They separated us immediately. Each crew member was taken to a different debriefing room. I sat alone in a windowless office for 3 hours before anyone came to talk to me. When the door finally opened, 2 people entered. A man in his 50s with gray hair and tired eyes. A woman in her 30s with a tablet and a recording device. The man introduced himself as Mr. Davidson, no first name, no agency affiliation. The woman didn't introduce herself at all. Petty Officer Morrison, you've been part of something extraordinary, Davidson began. You've seen something that challenges our understanding of biology, evolution, and humanity's place on this planet. What you saw is real. It's documented, and it's now classified at the highest possible level. Why? I asked. Why classify it? The world needs to know these beings exist. Scientists need to study them. We need to understand. Do we? Davidson interrupted. Let me ask you something. What do you think would happen if the public knew there were intelligent beings living in the ocean? Beings that preceded human civilization by millions of years? Beings that can sink ships, disrupt submarines, and communicate in ways we don't understand. I didn't answer. I knew where he was going. Panic, Davidson said. Religious upheaval. Economic collapse. Every fishing industry worldwide would shut down. Ocean shipping would be in chaos. And that's just the immediate effects. Long term, governments would weaponize them or try to exterminate them. Either way, it leads to catastrophe. So we just pretend they don't exist? We manage the information. We study them quietly. We establish protocols for interaction. And most importantly, we don't trigger a war between humanity and a species we don't understand and can't defeat. He leaned forward. You felt what they could do. That acoustic weapon. That EMP. Those were defensive measures. Imagine if they attacked with intent to kill. Imagine thousands of those beings coordinating an assault on coastal cities. We have no defense. None. The woman finally spoke. Your role now is to stay quiet, do your time, and move on with your life. You'll receive an honorable discharge whenever you request it. Full benefits, VA healthcare, pension, everything. In exchange, you never speak about what you saw. Not to family, not to friends, not to therapists, nobody, ever. And if I refuse, then we prosecute you under the Espionage Act, Davidson said calmly. You'll spend the rest of your life in federal prison. Your family will never know why. Is that really what you want? I signed the papers. We all did. Because what choice did we have? They kept us at Kitsap for 2 more weeks. More debriefings, more interviews. Psychological evaluations to make sure we weren't going to crack under the pressure of keeping the secret. They showed us doctored mission reports that made no mention of the being's official records that said we'd conducted routine Arctic patrol and returned without incident. This is your reality now, Davidson told me at our final meeting. The mission you think you remember never happened. The beings you think you saw don't exist. You spent 10 days underwater in the Arctic Ocean, and nothing unusual occurred. Can you live with that? I nodded, but I couldn't. None of us could. The crew scattered after discharge. Some stayed in the Navy and transferred to other boats. Some left the service immediately. We were forbidden from keeping in touch. But information has a way of spreading anyway, through mutual friends, through online forums using coded language. through the community of submarine veterans who know how to talk without saying anything directly. I heard Tommy Reeves had a breakdown 6 months after returning. Started talking about the beings in a bar, claiming they were talking to him in his dreams. He was hospitalized, medicated, and eventually medically discharged. Last I heard, he was living in Montana, as far from the ocean as possible. Dr. Chen went back to academia, but her research took a dark turn. She published papers about deep-sea adaptation, bioluminescence, and the evolutionary possibilities of aquatic humanoids, all theoretical, all careful never to reference our actual encounter. But people in certain circles noticed, started asking questions. Her funding dried up. She lost her tenure position. Now she writes blog posts that nobody reads about the mysteries of the deep ocean. Captain Richardson stayed in the Navy, got promoted. Last I heard, he was commanding a carrier strike group. I wonder if he thinks about what we saw. If he ever looks at the ocean and wonders what's looking back. As for me, I left the Navy in 2017, took my discharge, my benefits, and moved to Arizona desert. No water, no ocean, no possibility of ever encountering those beings again. But the nightmares followed me. I dream about the control room, about watching those beings rise from the depths, about that voice speaking through the hull, telling us to leave, warning us. I dream about being outside the submarine, suspended in the dark water, while thousands of those glowing forms swim past me. I dream about their eyes looking at me with intelligence and judgment. Sometimes I dream I'm one of them, breathing that glowing compound, swimming through the abyss, looking up at the surface world, where humans think they're alone, where they think they're the dominant species, where they're so confidently ignorant of what lives below. I started going to therapy 3 months after leaving the Navy. Civilian therapist, someone without security clearance. I told her I had nightmares from submarine service claustrophobia, anxiety, all true. I just left out the most important details. Have you tried exposure therapy? She asked. Gradually reintroducing yourself to the ocean might help. I laughed, couldn't help it. The idea of going back to the ocean, of putting even my feet in the water, made my skin crawl. I don't think that's going to work for me. Why not? Because what I'm afraid of is real. She gave me a look. Concerned. Professional. The look that said she was adding notes about possible delusions to my file. But she didn't push. That's the thing about good therapists. They know when to leave something alone. I tried to move on. Got a job in IT. Built a normal life. Dated, made friends who knew nothing about submarines or the Navy or classified missions. For a while, it almost worked. I could go days without thinking about what I'd seen. Then the news started changing. It began small. Fishing boats disappearing in the Arctic. Ships reporting strange sonar contacts. Scientists detecting unusual sounds in the deep ocean. Individual incidents that nobody connected. But I connected them. Because I knew what to look for. In 2017, a Russian trawler vanished near the Barents Sea. 17 crew members. No distress call. No wreckage. Just gone. The official report said they probably hit an iceberg, but I saw the last photograph the ship transmitted before disappearing, taken by a crew member on deck. It showed the ocean at night, and in the water, illuminated by the ship's lights, you could see them, pale forms, glowing from within, watching. In 2018, a marine biology team, studying deep-sea vents near Iceland, recorded sounds they couldn't identify. They called it bio-duck, and theorized it was an unknown species of whale. But I listened to the recording they posted online before it was taken down. I knew that sound, that singing, those harmonics. In 2019, 3 fishing boats disappeared off the coast of Alaska in a single week. The Coast Guard searched, but found nothing. Local native communities said they'd heard singing at night, strange lights under the water. The Coast Guard dismissed it as superstition, but I knew better. They were coming up, more frequently, in shallower waters, closer to human populations. And nobody was making the connection, because nobody knew what to look for. Nobody, except the crew of the Jimmy Carter. And we weren't allowed to talk. I started documenting everything, creating a database of incidents I thought were related disappearances, strange sonar contacts, unusual sound recordings. I used encrypted connections, anonymous accounts, careful never to directly reference what I'd seen or what I knew. But I wasn't the only one. I found others online, people using coded language to discuss anomalous maritime contacts and unidentified biological entities. Some were military, some were civilian, all of us dancing around the truth we couldn't speak directly. One user with the handle Sonar Ghost sent me a private message. "You were on the Carter, weren't you? June 2016. I didn't respond for 3 days. Finally, "Who is this?" "Someone who knows, someone who was there too. We need to talk." We arranged to meet in person, a diner in Colorado, neutral territory. I almost didn't go. Part of me thought it was a trap. The government testing if I'd break my NDA. But I went. Because I needed to know I wasn't alone. Needed to know someone else carried this burden. Tommy Reeves was sitting in a corner booth when I arrived. He'd aged 10 years in 2. Gray hair, deep lines around his eyes. But those eyes were clear, alert, sane. "James," he said quietly, "it's good to see you." We talked for 3 hours, compared notes, shared what we'd seen in the news, the patterns neither of us could ignore. "They're preparing for something," Tommy said. "All these sightings, all these incidents, they're testing us, seeing how we react, how we defend ourselves. They're gathering intelligence, just like we did." "For what? An invasion?" "I don't think they want to invade. I think they want us to leave, to stop polluting their ocean, to stop drilling and shipping, and making so much noise. They can't live in peace. They're giving us warnings. And we're not listening, because nobody knows there's anything to warn us about. The government covered it up." "Maybe that was a mistake," Tommy said. "Maybe if people knew, if scientists could study them, if governments could negotiate with them, we could find a way to coexist. But instead, we're stumbling toward a war neither side wants, and nobody will win. He pulled out a thumb drive and slid it across the table. I saved the recordings, all of them. The sonar logs, the audio of that voice speaking to us, everything. And I've been analyzing them for 3 years. I'm close to cracking their language. James understanding how they communicate. Maybe even learning to talk back. That's insane. If they find out that you have this, then they'll lock me up. Fine. But somebody needs to be working on this. Somebody needs to be trying to communicate. Because if we can talk to them, really talk to them, maybe we can avoid catastrophe. I took the drive. Against every instinct. Against the IA I'd signed and the threats I'd received. Because Tommy was right. Someone needed to try. Over the next year, we worked together remotely. He'd send me analysis of the language patterns I'd cross-reference with new incidents, looking for confirmation. Slowly, painfully, we began to understand fragments of their communication. The singing wasn't just language, it was layered. Multiple messages at different frequencies. Some were verbal communication. Others were emotional broadcasting. They could literally share feelings through sound, empathy, made acoustic. And the message they were broadcasting, fear, anger, desperation, they were afraid of us, of what we were doing to the ocean, of what we might do to them if we knew they existed. They weren't monsters. They weren't aliens. They were people trying to protect their home from an invasion they didn't ask for. In December 2019, Tommy disappeared. His apartment was cleaned out. His computer was wiped. His phone was disconnected. No forwarding address, no goodbye, just gone. I know what that means. The government found out what he was doing, and they made him disappear. Maybe into a black site. Maybe into a prison nobody knows about. Maybe into something worse. I'm probably next. I know that. By publishing this, by breaking my silence, I'm painting a target on my back. But I can't stay quiet anymore. Because 2 weeks ago, something happened that changed everything. My brother called me from San Diego. He works at the aquarium there, a marine biologist. He'd found something washed up on the beach, something he couldn't identify, something that looked almost human, but wasn't. He sent me a photograph before the authorities arrived and confiscated the body. Before they told him it was a decomposed whale, and he needed to forget he'd ever seen it. But I saw the photograph, saw the translucent skin, saw the bioluminescent organs even in death, saw the face that was human and not human at the same time. One of them had died, and it had washed ashore where humans could find it. The secret is breaking. The truth is coming out. And I think that's what they wanted. Why else come to the surface? Why else let themselves be seen? Maybe they've decided we need to know. Maybe they've decided the time for hiding is over. Maybe they're giving us one last chance to acknowledge their existence before they take action. I'm telling you this story because you need to be prepared. Because what's coming is bigger than the government can cover up, bigger than any NDA can contain. They're here. They've always been here. And they're done staying hidden. The ocean isn't empty. It never was. We just weren't looking deep enough. And now that we know, now that the truth is coming out, we have a choice. Learn to coexist with them. Or go to war with beings we don't understand and can't defeat. I hope we choose wisely. But I'm not optimistic. If you never hear from me again, you'll know why. But at least the story will be out there. At least someone will know the truth. The ocean is singing, and we need to learn to listen. I'm writing this from a location I can't disclose. After I posted the first parts of my story, things happened quickly. My apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen, but everything searched. My computer's webcam was activated remotely. Black SUVs started parking on my street. I knew what was coming. So I ran. I liquidated my accounts, bought a used car with cash, drove to a place where nobody knew my name. And I kept writing, kept documenting, because the story needs to be told. Even if I'm not around to tell the ending. But something else happened. Something I didn't expect. People reached out. Dozens of them. Some were Navy veterans who'd had similar experiences. Others were fishermen who'd seen things they couldn't explain. Scientists who'd recorded sounds that shouldn't exist. Coast Guard officers who'd investigated disappearances that made no sense. They all had pieces of the puzzle. And when you put those pieces together, a picture emerged that was more terrifying than anything I'd imagined. The beings weren't just in the Arctic. They were everywhere. Atlantic, Pacific, Indian Ocean, Mediterranean, every deep trench, every underwater canyon. Thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands, living in the parts of the ocean we'd never explored. The 95% we know nothing about. And they were all coordinating. The sightings weren't random. They were organized, systematic, like a military doing reconnaissance before an operation. One message stood out. It came from a woman named Elena Volkov. She identified herself as a former Russian Navy sonar operator. She'd been on a submarine that encountered the beings in 2014, 2 years before our incident. Her crew had recorded everything, had tried to communicate, had been silenced just like we were. But Elena had kept records, and she'd been analyzing patterns for 7 years. She sent me her data. According to her research, the beings surfaced every 3 years, always in June, always in Arctic waters. It was a cycle, a pattern that had probably been happening for centuries, but nobody noticed because nobody was looking. Traditional Arctic peoples had stories about it, the singing time, they called it. When the ice broke and the old ones rose from below. But the last 3 cycles had been different. The gatherings were larger. The surfacing events lasted longer. More beings each time. Like a population that was mobilizing, preparing. They're building to something, Elena wrote. 2016 was reconnaissance. 2019 was intimidation. 2022 will be something else, something bigger. And I think we triggered it. All our submarine activity, all our deep sea mining, all our sonar, we're destroying their habitat, and they're not going to tolerate it much longer. I looked at the calendar. in 2022. That was next month. I started monitoring maritime news obsessively, checking for patterns, for signs. And I found them. Ships were avoiding certain areas of the Arctic, not officially. No announcements or warnings, but you could see it in the shipping lane data vessels that normally took direct northern routes were detouring, adding days to their journeys, burning extra fuel, all to avoid specific coordinates. Commercial fishing in the Barents Sea had dropped by 60%. Captains were citing equipment malfunctions and weather concerns. But I spoke to one captain off the record. He told me the truth. "The ocean's alive up there," he said. "I don't know how else to describe it. The water moves wrong. We hear singing at night. Our sonar picks up on tacks that shouldn't exist. Every fisherman knows. We just don't talk about it because people think we're crazy. But we're not going back, not for any amount of money." Native communities in Alaska were reporting the same things. Elders warning young people to stay away from the water. Stories of people hearing voices calling them from the ocean. Lights under the ice that moved with purpose. On June 1st, 2022, a research vessel disappeared. The Oceanic Explorer, operating under NOAA authority, was conducting climate studies in the Arctic Ocean. They reported unusual sonar contacts, then their transponder went offline. Search and rescue found the ship 3 days later. It was intact, floating, no damage. But the entire crew was gone. All 17 people. Their equipment was still running. Their personal belongings were still in their cabins. The last entry in the ship's log read, "They're here. They're singing. We can't." That was all. The incident barely made the news. Too strange to report without sounding like science fiction. The official explanation was catastrophic weather event, even though weather in the area had been calm. The families were paid settlements. The story was buried. But I knew what had happened. They'd taken them. The beings had taken the entire crew. Maybe as prisoners. Maybe as apples. Maybe as a message. "We're coming." And we're done asking politely. On June 15th, I received a package. No return address, no postage, just appeared on the doorstep of the place I was staying. Side was a waterproof case containing a satellite phone and a note written in handwriting. I recognized Tommy Reeves. "James, if you're reading this, I'm either dead or I wish I was. They found me in 2019 like you suspected, but they didn't arrest me. They recruited me. There's a program. Black budget. So classified it doesn't have a name. They're trying to communicate with them. To negotiate. To prevent what's coming. It's not working. We've been trying for 3 years. Sent submarines to the deep trenches, broadcast messages in their language, offered peace, offered coexistence. They ignore us. Or worse, they respond with aggression. Last month, they sank a submarine, killed all hands, covered it up as a training accident. The government is preparing for war, developing acoustic weapons, planning deep-sea operations, trying to find their main population centers so they can strike first. They think they can win. They're wrong. This phone is programmed with one number. Call it on June 21st at 0200 UTC. Someone will answer, someone who can help. But James, understand something. By calling, you're choosing a side, and there's no going back. June 21st. That was 6 days away. I spent those 6 days investigating, trying to understand what choice I was really making. And the more I learned, the clearer it became. Humanity was going to war with the ocean, with beings that had been here long before us, that understood the deep seas in ways we couldn't imagine, that could coordinate across thousands of miles, that could sing songs that made steel hulls vibrate and human hearts stop. We were going to lose. The only question was, how many people would die before we admitted it? On June 20th, I drove to the Pacific coast, stood on a beach and watched the sunset, tried to see the ocean as something other than a threat. But all I could think about was what lived below, what was waiting. That night, I didn't sleep, sat in my car near the beach with Tommy's satellite phone in my hand, watched the clock tick toward 0200 UT, toward the moment of decision. At exactly 0200, I dialed. The phone rang once. A voice answered. Female, young, familiar. You should not be here. It was the same voice from the submarine, the one that had spoken through our hull, the one that had told us to leave. But now, it was coming through a phone, through a device it should have no access to, no knowledge of how. I couldn't finish the question. We learned, the voice said. We watched. We listened. We understand your technology now, your communication, your language, everything. What do you want? For you to stop. Stop the noise. Stop the drilling. Stop poisoning our home. Leave the deep ocean alone. Stay in your shallow waters. Stay on your land. Let us live in peace. I'm just one person. I can't make that happen. Then find others. Find humans who understand, who will listen. Because your governments are not listening. They are preparing to attack, to kill us, to claim the ocean as theirs alone. And if they attack, we will defend ourselves, and your species will lose. Is that a threat? It is a fact. You cannot win a war against the ocean. We are the ocean. We have been here for millions of years. We will be here long after your civilization falls. This is not arrogance. It is simply truth. I believed her. Every word. What do you want me to do? Tell your story. Make your people understand we exist. That we are intelligent. That we have a right to our home. Create awareness before the war begins. It is your only chance to prevent catastrophe. The government will silence me. They've already tried. Then be louder. Find others who know build a movement. Your people respond to public pressure. Make enough noise and your leaders will have to listen. Make them choose peace. And if they don't, silence. Long enough that I thought the call had dropped, and then we rise. All of us at once. And we show your people what the ocean can do when it fights back. The line went dead. I sat in my car as dawn broke over the Pacific, watching the waves, knowing what lived beneath them, knowing what was coming. I had a choice: stay silent and let the government's plans proceed. Let humanity stumble into a war we couldn't win. Or speak out. Tell the truth. Risk everything to prevent the coming catastrophe. It wasn't really a choice at all. Final message. Posted June 23rd, 2022. 2. This is my final post. By the time you read this, I'll be in protective custody, or in a government black site, or dead. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you know the truth. They're real. They're intelligent. They're here. And we're running out of time to prevent a war that will devastate both our species. If you're reading this, I need you to do something. Share this story. Copy it. Save it. Spread it before it gets deleted. Make it impossible to suppress. Force the government to acknowledge what's happening. Look for the signs. Ships avoiding certain ocean areas. Fishing boats refusing to work. Strange sounds recorded underwater. Disappearances near deep water. They're all connected. They're all evidence of what's coming. And if you live near the ocean, pay attention. If you hear singing at night, if you see lights under the water, if you feel like something is watching from the depths, don't ignore it. Don't dismiss it as imagination. It's real. And it's trying to communicate. I don't know if we can prevent the coming war. I don't know if humanity is capable of sharing the planet with another intelligent species. But I know we have to try. Because the alternative is extinction. Maybe not immediate, maybe not obvious. But if we go to war with the ocean, we lose. Eventually, inevitably. They control 71% of the planet's surface, the source of our oxygen, our food, our weather. You can't fight that. You can only learn to coexist with it. So please, spread this story. Demand answers. Make your government acknowledge these beings exist. Force negotiations instead of warfare. It's our only chance. The ocean is singing. And for the first time in human history, we need to learn to sing back. Sound of waves, wind, a beach at night. My name was James Morrison, Petty Officer First Class, United States Navy. If you're hearing this, I'm gone. But the story continues. They came for me on June 24th, 2022. 3 days after I made that call. They were professional about it. No violence. Just men in suits, explaining I was being taken into protective custody for my own safety. I went peacefully. What else could I do? They took me to a facility I can't describe, in a location I can't disclose. And they showed me things I wish I'd never seen. Plans for the war. Weapons designed to kill in the deep ocean. Strategies for genocide dressed up as defense. But they also showed me something else. Satellite imagery from June 21st, 2022. The same day I made that call. Images that hadn't been released to the public, couldn't be released because they would cause panic. The Arctic Ocean, every deep trench, every underwater canyon, all across the world's oceans. They were surfacing, thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands, all at once, all singing, a global event that lasted 6 hours. And then they dove again, disappeared back into the depths. But the message was clear. We're here. We're unified and we're ready. The war hasn't started yet. Both sides are still posturing, still preparing. But it's coming soon, unless we stop it. I don't know how much longer they'll keep me here. Don't know if I'll ever be released. But I had to leave this final message because someone needs to know the whole truth. We're not alone on this planet. We never were. We just convinced ourselves we were because it was easier than acknowledging what lived in the places we couldn't reach. But those places are shrinking. Climate change, ocean exploration, deep sea mining. We're pushing into their territory, destroying their home, and they're not going to watch it happen quietly. The beings I met on that submarine were people, different people, ancient people, but people nonetheless, with intelligence, with emotions, with a right to exist. And if we can't recognize that, if we can't learn to share this planet with them, then we don't deserve to call ourselves the intelligent species. The ocean is 36,000 feet deep. We've explored less than 5% of it. What else is down there that we don't know about? What else have we disturbed with our noise and our waste and our arrogance? Maybe it's time we learned some humility. Maybe it's time we remembered we're not the only ones who call Earth home. The singing continues every night, all across the world. They're talking to each other, coordinating planning. And we need to be ready, not for war, for conversation, for negotiation, for coexistence. It's not too late. It can't be too late, please. If anyone is listening, anyone with power to make change, reach out, communicate, choose peace before the ocean rises, before the singing turns to screaming, before we lose everything. The choice is ours for now. But the ocean is patient, and it remembers everything, remembers.